I think the funeral of Pope Francis today was at once an event of deep historical resonance and a striking moment of quiet reform. As with so much of his papacy, it married the enduring weight of tradition with the simplicity and the humility Francis himself embodied, the familiar and the new interwoven in every aspect of the rites, including the seating arrangement of the guests. But some practices remain almost stubbornly ancient. As ever, his face was veiled with a white silk cloth, a symbol of his death as a private soul before God rather than a public figure. Into his coffin were slipped the traditional artifacts, a purse of gold, silver, and bronze coins, one for each year, month, and day of his reign, and a scroll, the Rogito, detailing his life and work sealed with a metal tube. And these were tangible echoes of ceremonies stretching back to the medieval papal court, and in their quiet solemnity they assert the timelessness of his role. And yet, alongside the old, Francis's funeral was strikingly new. For the first time since Leo XIII in the early 20th century, a pope was not buried within St. Peter's, but rather in the Basilica of St. Maria Maggiore, reflecting Francis's lifelong devotion to the Virgin Mary. Indeed, his final resting place lies mere steps from the icon Salvus Populi Romani, before which he'd prayed so often, and which was brought out into the Vatican during the COVID period, and he was in the Vatican Square praying with that icon entirely alone. The simplicity of this choice, no elaborate sarcophagus, no grandiose inscription, only Franciscus, embodied the poor church for the poor that he attempted to build. And the procession itself felt historic. Francis's coffin was transported across Rome in a modern motorcade, echoing the horse-drawn cortege of the past. Some 400,000 mourners lined the streets, their applause and cries of Papa Francesco hauntingly reminiscent of the public outpouring seen when Queen Elizabeth II's cortege passed through London. And the physical movement from Vatican City to the heart of Rome symbolized a return of the papacy to the people, because, of course, he was also the Bishop of Rome, away from the marble aloofness of the Vatican palaces. Liturgically, Francis's reforms were felt most acutely. He deliberately simplified the funeral rites ahead of time, insisting that the Mass should be that of any bishop, not a monarch. The funeral Mass, with the singing of the Litany of the Saints, and the Byzantine Christos Anesti intoned by the Eastern prelates, recalled ancient Christian unity, though notably the Eastern clerics didn't sense the coffin, a small but curious departure from my expectations. And the ceremonial splendour of earlier papal funerals, the three coffins, there were at least two coffins there, the coffin of zinc and the coffin of wood. But in the past, there would be these colossal catafalques on which the popes would be laid out. The slow, magnificent processions, all of that has been pruned back, but the pruning has started with Paul VI. And Francis's funeral pared them back further still. No ornate hearse, no towering candles, no lavish mourners' tributes. All of that went, I think, with John the 23rd. And only the people, the migrants, the poor, the prisoners, were given pride of place to welcome him to his tomb. World leaders came too, of course. Trump, Zelensky, Guterres, Prince William Starmer, even the estranged Argentine President Javier Milei. Their presence testified to the continuing political weight of the papacy, as Francis had done so much to shed its trappings of worldly power. The guiding spirit of the funeral was the Novem Vetus, the new old, a recognition that tradition to be living must be adapted. And Francis preserved the heart of the papal funeral but removed the accretions. His reforms were not iconoclastic, but restorative, a stripping away to reveal the beating heart beneath, a pastor among his flock, even in death. Now, I must put my cards on the table. I think the implementation of the reforms of Vatican II, at least in the 1970s, were appalling. I think they've gradually got back to where Vatican II was intending. I think there's so much more to be done with Vatican II. I'm afraid I had enough of it in the late 1970s, and I moved over to the Orthodox Church. And so, in many ways, I should not be saluting Pope Francis because he was very much a reformer and very much somebody who was paring back the liturgical weight of the inherited from the 1950s into the 60s. But I think there's so much about Francis that was commendable and laudable and to be and to be called out as good. His funeral was a triumph of humility, clothed in splendor, and splendor tempered by humanity, a fitting final act for a man who had always insisted on being remembered simply as a parish priest for the world.